When it comes to the sales process as a fractional executive or consultant, it might be something that's completely new to you. You may have never had a structured process for sales before. You're very confident in what it is that you can do and the results you can have for your clients, but you've never had to go through and build out a sales process. And if you're not from a sales background, that can be quite daunting. So I want to share a few tips in terms of the overall sales process and some of the things that you can do to feel more prepared and confident as you go into a sales cycle with a prospect. So the first thing that I always recommend that people do is that they need to do a little bit of preparation before they have a call with a prospect. Now, this might be the first call that you're having with them, which is also known as a discovery call. And to prep for that, what I tend to do is look for two professional and two or three personal things about the prospect that I'm reaching out to. So from a professional point of view, these are things like company updates, the company history, any sort of previous campaigns that are related to the service and the offer that you have, and also the products and services that they offer as well. So you want to have an understanding at least of what it is that they do, who they sell to, and what they've done in the past. So that's on the professional side. Now, just note down a couple of things that I could drop into the conversation. I'm not going to start my call by listing out all of this research, but I am going to nod along and I am going to reference these things that I find when they come up naturally in the conversation. The second side of things is the personal items of information or nuggets that you can use to drop in. So these are things like where are they based and where do they work from? Which universities or colleges did they go to? What I'm looking for is similarities or patterns that I can connect with my own experience as well. What's their work history? Have they worked in any organizations similar to the organizations that I've worked with, either at as an employee or employer, or have been a client of mine? What hobbies or volunteering experience they have, if they've shared any whatsoever, and then previous posts and things that they've shared online. Now, look, I'm not saying that you should go on Instagram and stalk them and look back to what they did in 2019. That is not what we're talking about here. But what we are looking to do is pull out some nuggets of information that we can use to help build that rapport when we're having a call with a prospect so that they feel heard and understood. And obviously, you can demonstrate that you've actually prepared a little bit for the call as well. So, if that's the pre sales call prep, let's walk through some of the things to consider when you are running a discovery call. And a discovery call is really where I think most sales are won or lost. And what a lot of fractional executives and consultants do is kind of start with a sales deck or credentials deck or sales presentation, and they make the call all about them as the consultant, as the person that can solve the problem, the hero of that journey. And what I advocate for and encourage you to do is not position yourself as the hero, but think of yourself more as the guide. So you are there to guide your prospect on their own hero's journey. And the first thing that you really need to do is set an agenda. This helps you manage expectations of the sales call. It also removes any sort of anxiety or concerns that a prospect might have. And a very simple agenda just has to cover a few things. You just want to say that really this call is about finding out about their challenges and determining if you can help. You'll ask questions about what they've done so far to overcome the challenges that they're facing, understand the motivations behind why now, why they're looking to solve that problem, and of course, you'll be there to present a solution if you can help them. And if not, maybe you can point them in the right direction. You also want to talk about the decision-making process and discuss next steps. Do you have any questions before we get started? Is how you can just end the agenda part. That gives a little bit of space, breathing room, first of all, for the prospect and yourself, and a little bit of space for them to ask any questions. Now, if they come up with a question which is a little bit too forward, a little bit too early in the process, you can say, "Thank you, I've noted that question down. I'll come back to that later on." So the next part of the sales call is to really dive into their needs. This is known as a needs analysis, but really it's just about asking questions. You want to find out what they are actually trying to do, and also what have they done so far to solve it. And if it hasn't worked, why do they think it hasn't worked? You also want to understand like what's the consequences of not solving this problem, because this can be used in the sales process and your proposals as helping them overcome that cost of inaction. So if they have certain goals that they need to hit, if they don't change anything or do anything differently with your support and guidance, then what's going to happen when they miss those targets? Personally, how are they going to feel? Professionally, what impact does that have on their career? Also, you want to understand what other options they're exploring at the moment. Are they speaking to competitors? Are they looking at internal talent that they might put on this project? And what's their decision-making process as well? The amount of deals that I've seen that have been lost or that I've lost myself from not fully finding out who those other decision makers were, and I didn't appropriately give them enough information to help them make a decision. So really important that you find out the decision-making process and procurement process here as well. One of my clients was really, really happy that they're working with a very, very well-known software company. However, he didn't go through the process of the decision-making process in their procurement and their net payment terms. And I think he's 60 days after starting now and he still hasn't been paid. That could have all have been avoided had he covered that during the sales process. And that's something that he's working on to improve for the next time. Because it's not about beating yourself up when little mistakes are made. Then you may want to move on to presenting the solution, especially if it is something that you can help with. What you want to do here is demonstrate that you've helped other people with a similar problem and you can walk through what you did for them, of course, keeping in mind confidentiality. And also, you may want to share indicative pricing. Now, if it's a very much productized service that you offer, there's nothing wrong at all with stating the pricing and talking about what that engagement looks like and the onboarding process from there. If you need to put together a proposal or put together more of a bespoke presentation for them, that's also fine, but do share what the range of pricing is. So it typically starts at 10K, which is a one time, and then the retainer would be 5 to 8K per month. Whatever it may be for you, of course, it's going to be different, but this helps manage their expectations and also helps save time, because if that's too much for them, you can simply finish the call and move on. Or if you have like a downsell offer, that's something also that you can give them as an opportunity. Then lastly, I would say that you always want to book a meeting from a meeting. In the world of sales, this is known as BAMFAM. Here, what it is you're just securing your next meeting with that prospect. The way that I like to manage this is to say, okay, Mr. Prospect, Ms. Prospect, thank you for your time. I need to go away and put together a bespoke proposal, which I'll send across to you before we have our next call. Let's get that second call scheduled in. How does Thursday at 3 p.m. UK time work for you? Great, perfect. Let me send across the calendar now. And what I'll do is I'll send you the proposal a few hours before that call so you have a chance to read the proposal and we can go through it together and I can answer any questions. You really want to have them on the call so you can, as you go through the proposal, you can see their reaction, look at their body language, pick up on the cues that they're giving off when going through certain things, and also gives them some time to prepare some questions to make this second call more effective for you. So that's book a meeting from a meeting. I strongly recommend it. You're not always going to be able to book it 100% of the time, but you will find that 80%, 90% of the time you'll be able to secure those meetings in. And for me, it's a little bit of a red flag if a prospect doesn't want to schedule that second meeting in as well. So that's just something that I use as a gut feel, gut check to see whether I think it's worth spending more of my time on this prospect or not. Then after the sales call, you want to make sure that you're sending a post-call follow-up. This is a summary of the conversation that you had, highlighting the problems and challenges that they mentioned, and also alluding to the solution of how you can help. You might have some additional readings, some sales decks that you might want to include in the follow-up email, which is perfectly fine. But make sure that you change the language of your message to be more specific to the prospect. So in my world, we talk about booking meetings or generating pipeline. They mean the same thing. But if a prospect is talking to me about booking more meetings and I need more meetings, my team needs more meetings, I am going to say in the language of my follow-up email about helping their team book more meetings. I wouldn't switch to talking about generating pipeline, even though it's the same thing, because I want to use the language that they've shared with me back to them to show that I've understood, I've heard, and we're on the same page. And that's really, really important. There's nothing worse than coming off a call thinking, that person just did not get me whatsoever, and I'm not sure I want to work with them. The other thing as well is make sure that you have some content ready to send to your prospects in a separate email as well. Now, that might be more information about the onboarding process. It might be the client timeline that you have. It might be some case studies and some social proof. But what you want to do is stay top of mind with the prospect so that before the next call that you have with them, they've already received some valuable content or some content from you. I had an experience recently with a company that was going to help with my YouTube videos. I had 2 calls booked. The first call that I had, I'd mentioned to the person that I have another call booked the following day with a different provider. And what I'm going to do is look at both options together and make a decision from there. I had my call with the second provider on a Friday, and I never received a follow-up email from the first person until the following week. at which point I had evaluated the 2 conversations that I had. I'd received the follow-up messaging from the second call that I had with the second service provider, and I'd pretty much already made my decision, because it left me with a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth that the person didn't follow up with me. And if they didn't follow up with me on a sales call, what's it like? What's it going to be like working with them? If that's how they operate and manage the sales process, then do I have the confidence that they can manage the actual service that I'm offering? So it's really, really important, the optics of how you follow up with prospects. Another thing that a lot of fractional executives and consultants struggle with is objections. I think the key here with objections is not to take them personally. They are an opportunity for you to learn more about where that question is coming from and actually answer the question and help put the prospect at ease. So there's a simple framework for handling objections. The first is to listen. Don't interject, don't interrupt the prospect as they're sharing their objection. Then you want to rephrase. So you may rephrase their objection with, so just so I understand, you're a little bit concerned about how long the onboarding period will take and how much involvement that will be from you. Is that right? And then you want to then question in more detail. So with this example of the onboarding process being too long and taking up too many hours, I might ask, is there anybody else that we can involve in the process that can help speed things up to you? Or I might suggest that actually we can do this stuff asynchronously, and then we only need a meeting to speak about A and B. And then lastly, you want to respond. So I just gave the example of my response there, which was helping handle that objection. What you really want to do here is just find out where that's coming from. The perception that they have might be completely wrong, and all you need to do is just to manage those expectations and then work through those objections with the prospect. So those are a few